What if I told you that an Amish woman can live her entire life within a mile of a hospital, deliver 8 children at home, and still walk into a medical facility for the first time in her 40s secretly, without telling her husband, without telling her bishop, and without any certainty that she will be allowed to return to the life she left that morning? What she was taught. An Amish girl grows up understanding that her body is in God's hands. Illness is not a malfunction to be fixed. It is something to be endured, prayed over, and surrendered to God's will. Home remedies come first. The midwife comes second. The doctor comes last, and only when the situation is serious enough that the community agrees no other option remains. A hospital is not a place an Amish woman thinks of as hers. It belongs to the English world. It runs on insurance she does not have, technology she was not raised to trust, and a system that does not know how to see her. Why she went anyway. Something has been wrong for months, maybe longer. A lump she found and said nothing about. A pain that comes and goes but never fully leaves. Bleeding that is not normal and that she has quietly tracked through the winter. She has prayed about it. She has used what she knows: herbs, rest, the remedies her mother taught her. None of it has changed what she feels in her body. What moves her toward the hospital is not courage exactly. It is the quiet, accumulating certainty that whatever is happening will not resolve on its own. She has children who need her. That thought sits heavier than any rule the bishop ever spoke from the front of a church service. How she got there. She did not drive herself. She has no license and no car. What she has is a hired driver, a non-Amish man or woman who regularly transports Amish community members to appointments, markets, and errands the horse and buggy cannot reach. This system is well established in most Amish communities. The driver knows not to ask too many questions. He has made this particular kind of trip before a woman in plain dress, sitting quietly in the back seat, carrying something she has not told anyone about. She told her husband she had errands. She told herself she would decide what to say after she knew what there was to say. The hospital encounter. Walking through the automatic doors of a hospital for the first time is disorienting in a way that is difficult to describe to someone who has done it 100 times. Everything moves differently than the world she came from. The lights, the sounds, the pace of people who are not looking at her but who notice her, the plain dress, the prayer covering, the quiet stillness of a woman who does not belong here and knows it. She gives her name at the desk. She does not have insurance. She pays in cash if she has it, or she agrees to a payment plan she is not sure how to explain when she gets home. The intake nurse asks questions she is not prepared for. Medical history, previous diagnoses, list of medications. The answers are mostly none, none, and none. She has never had a mammogram. She has never had a cervical screening. She has delivered her children at home and seen a doctor only when something became impossible to manage without one. The nurse writes everything down without judgment. The doctor who comes in does the same. What they find when they examine her is something she already suspected. She needed a name for it. Now she has one. What doctors find. What medical professionals consistently find when Amish women present at hospitals is the result of years without preventive care. Research published in medical literature confirms that Amish women face significantly higher rates of delayed cancer diagnosis, particularly cervical and breast cancer, because mammograms and regular screenings are not standard practice in their communities. By the time a condition surfaces clearly enough to send a woman to a hospital, it has often been developing for years. Osteoporosis is common, a direct consequence of multiple pregnancies and extended breastfeeding that depletes bone density over time. Untreated chronic conditions like hypertension and diabetes appear regularly in Amish women who had no reason to know the numbers because no one had ever measured them. Dental problems left unaddressed for years. Vision changes never corrected. Conditions that, caught earlier, would have been simple to manage and that now require more. None of this is the result of neglect in the ordinary sense. It is the result of a medical culture that treats prevention as unnecessary and suffering as spiritually meaningful, and of a woman who had no framework until now. for understanding that her body was telling her something the community's framework had no language for: paying without insurance. The Amish do not carry health insurance. It is not an oversight, it is a theological position. The community believes that caring for its members in times of need is the church's responsibility, not the government's and not a private company's. Amish Hospital Aid, a community mutual fund that exists in many districts, covers major medical costs when they are known about and approved by community leadership. What it does not easily cover is a hospital visit the community did not know about. A woman who went secretly, paid out of pocket, and is now sitting across from a billing department trying to explain a $500 invoice without involving her husband or her bishop, has entered territory the mutual aid system was not designed for. Some hospitals in areas with large Amish populations have established reduced fee arrangements specifically because this situation is not uncommon. The woman pays what she can at the time of service. The rest becomes a quiet debt she manages in ways her household accounts do not fully reflect. Some women pay it down slowly over months through small amounts set aside from household money. Others eventually tell their husbands and let the community aid system absorb it. Either way, the financial reality of a secret hospital visit does not disappear when she walks back out the door. The ride home. The drive back is different from the drive there. She knows things now that she did not know that morning. The hired driver does not ask what happened. He has learned over years of these trips that the question is not his to ask. He drives. She sits in the back seat with a folder of papers she will need to figure out where to hide, a prescription she is not sure how to fill without being noticed, and a diagnosis that has changed the shape of everything she thought she knew about the next several years of her life. She looks out the window at the farms passing by, at the fields she knows, at the road that leads back to her house, her children, her husband, who is somewhere on the property doing what he always does on a Tuesday afternoon. She has approximately 12 minutes to decide what she is going to say when she gets out of that car. She has not decided yet. She is still sitting with what she just learned in the particular silence of a person who has received difficult news alone and has no one immediately available to receive it with her. She pays the driver. She thanks him. She walks across the yard as if she has been to the market. She starts supper, and she does not say anything yet. Community finds out. In a community this small, a secret involving a hired driver has at least one witness. The driver may say nothing, most do not, but a neighbor who saw the van, a woman at the market who noticed she was gone on a day she is usually home, a child who mentioned something without understanding what they were mentioning. Information in Amish communities does not require technology to travel. It requires only people, proximity, and time. When it surfaces, and in most cases it does, the first wave is not confrontation. It is questions framed as concern. A neighbor who stops by and asks how she has been feeling. A deacon's wife who mentions she heard she had some errands to attend to. The questions come wrapped in warmth that contains a direction. She can feel the direction without anyone stating it plainly. What she has done is not, in itself, forbidden. The Amish have no theological rule against seeking medical care. What is complicated is the secrecy, the fact that she went without telling her husband, without involving the community, and without the knowledge of the bishop. It is not the hospital that concerns them. It is the privacy, the decision made alone. In a community built on shared accountability, a woman who acts entirely on her own judgment, even about her own body, has stepped outside something that matters. Bishop and husband. Her husband finds out the way most Amish husbands find out things that have been kept from them, not from her, and not all at once. A partial account reaches him first, then more. By the time he sits down with her to ask directly, he already knows enough that denial is not an option. His response depends on what she found at the hospital. If the visit revealed something serious, a diagnosis that now requires ongoing treatment, his response tends to move quickly from shock toward practicality. He begins asking questions about what is needed and how the community can help. The secrecy becomes secondary to the fact of what she is facing. If the visit was for something the community would view as unnecessary preventive screening, something related to birth control, a mental health concern, the conversation goes differently. He wants to know why she did not tell him. The question he is really asking is why she did not trust him. And that question does not have a simple answer, because the honest answer that she was not sure he would have let her go is itself something that reveals a gap in the marriage that neither of them has spoken about before. The bishop's involvement follows shortly after. His concern is pastoral, not punitive. He sits with them together. He asks about the medical situation and whether the community can provide support. He also carefully addresses the matter of decisions made without the husband's knowledge. He does not use harsh language. He does not threaten discipline. But the message is clear. The community is meant to carry these things together. A woman who carries something alone has moved outside the structure the Ordnung was built to protect. What other women saw. The women in her community who learn what happened watch the situation more carefully than anyone tracks. They watch how her husband responds. They watch what the bishop says and what he does not say. They watch whether she faces consequences or whether the matter is absorbed quietly because of the seriousness of what she found. And some of them, the ones who have their own things they have not said aloud, their own symptoms they have been praying over, their own quiet certainty that something is not right, take note of what happens to her. If she faces serious discipline, they pull back. If she is met with support and the community rallies around her treatment, something shifts. She has, without intending to, created a data point that other women will use when they are lying awake at 3 in the morning trying to decide whether to make the same call. A few of them will, quietly with their own hired driver on their own Tuesday afternoon, because she went first, because she showed that the door opens from the inside, and because sometimes a woman needs to know what is happening in her own body more than she needs to wait for the community's permission to find out. The door she opened. There is a version of this story where the woman who secretly went to the hospital is the exception, the unusual case, the one woman in the district who stepped outside the expected path and faced whatever came next alone. That version exists, but it is not the whole picture. What she did is not as rare as the community's silence around it suggests. Women in Amish communities across the country make this same trip with hired drivers on quiet mornings with carefully constructed explanations that technically answer the questions they will be asked without revealing the answers that matter. They do it because their bodies are telling them something that neither prayer nor patience has resolved. They do it because they have children who need them to still be here in 5 years. They do it because the instinct to survive is not something the Ordnung was ever fully able to regulate, even when it tried. What changes after her visit is not the community's rules. Those remain exactly as they were. What changes is something smaller and more durable, the knowledge held privately by the women who watched that the door to that world exists and that it opens, that a woman can walk through it and come back, that the thing she was most afraid of, the judgment, the husband's anger, the bishop's response, is survivable. She went to a hospital. She found out what was happening in her body. She came home and started supper and did not say anything yet. And in the weeks that followed, she began to figure out what came next, one quiet decision at a time, in a life that was still hers, in a community that would never fully know everything she had carried through its doors.